This episode is made possible by the support we get from Fort Collins Kia. If you are in the market for any electric Kia, not only do they never add market adjustments, they will deliver your car to you anywhere in the 48 contiguous states for out-of-spec viewers. More information in the link in the show notes. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Out of Spec podcast. If you have been following anything we've been doing lately, you know that the whole team, and more than the team, friends and family, have been involved in everything electric trucks. Rivian, Lightning, Cybertruck, Silverado. 4 trucks going absolutely everywhere with it, towing, racing, and really testing them from top to bottom. And it's been a lot of fun and it's been really busy. And another thing that the team did is, of course, race those 4 different electric vehicle trucks from Jacksonville, Florida, all the way to San Diego, California without stopping. And it was a race. It was to see who charged best and how the team also, it was up to the teams to be strategic, and then also who would get there first, all that efficiency, all that crazy stuff. And for some reason, a bunch of guys agreed to do it and stretch it out from Jacksonville to San Diego. Today, we are here with the Cybertruck team. That is Kyle calling in from the Cybertruck, Drew from Martian Wheels, and Brandon Tesla Flex. So thank y'all for hopping on the podcast to tell me all about what it was like to spend, how many hours? Over 50 hours together with the Cybertruck, racing across the country. It's a long time. So let's start maybe just from the beginning. How did it all begin for you all in Jackson, Florida? I know that Kyle was there, like, absolutely trying to wrangle cats. Speaking of, Brandon just had a cat walking across his screen. But to get everything in order, and then y'all said, okay, we agree to come along. Drew and Brandon, how was it an easy decision to come on this trip?
Well, for me, it was an easy decision. To make it happen was sort of last minute, but yeah, I mean the cannonballs, the big out of spec events, those are always ones I want to be a part of. So yeah, easy decision.
What about you, Brandon?
Well, I found out about this on like a Tuesday at 3 p.m. and on Wednesday the next morning I was flying to Jacksonville. So I just thought, like, who else is going to drive 4 electric trucks across the country? So
Exactly. We need the
pretty cool, and it was.
Yeah. I feel like everyone had a pretty good time.
It's a pretty elite group. You gotta have several prerequisites to be good at this anyway.
Tell me more about those prerequisites, Drew.
I mean, you got to know about electric cars, and and then get really into the intricacies of the details of well, at least your vehicle that you're driving, and how it operates best, and charges best. And so yeah, I mean that narrows the number of people that can do this into a pretty small group right off the bat. And then got to be okay with getting a little spicy behind the wheel, and not sleeping. If you're a fan of Red Bull, that's a plus.
Definitely. A good old Celsius. Oh yeah. I mean, I'm sure y'all's diets were just really great, full of all the nutrition you needed. But you bring up a good point, Drew, about the charging curves and the capabilities of the EV or the electric truck that you're in. And Kyle, calling in from the Cybertruck itself, can you tell us about the specs of the Cybertruck? How you got your hands on it, just in case people don't know. Where did this Cybertruck come from?
Right. Well, we took delivery at the Jacksonville, Florida delivery center, which is kind of what prompted this whole event. I was like, Jacksonville is the closest, I should say Jacksonville to San Diego is the shortest cross-country route there is. And I always thought, well, we should probably run that with an electric car. And I had an F-150 Lightning that I drove down to Florida with my dad to make a video on Tesla Superchargers versus CCS. And I'm like, well, I'm in Florida. I have a Cybertruck and a Lightning. We should get like a Rivian, and we should run all 3 of these electric trucks across the country. And then I remembered I had Hertz, at least in California, had Silverado EVs for rent. And I called up a friend of mine who works for Hertz, and I'm like, "Hey, do you have any Silverado EVs in Florida that we could rent?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, there's one like literally at the Hertz, right like 10 minutes from where I was, ready to go." So it actually worked out pretty well, because I think, Brandon, it was when you flew in, we picked up the Silverado. Is that how that worked?
Yeah, walked right from the gate over to Hertz and just got in the Silverado and left.
Yeah, so
Wow.
that
Very
worked out.
convenient.
Yeah, that worked out great. And so then we had, all 4 electric trucks in Jacksonville, and we were like, cool. The only thing we were missing was Hummer EV, but Silverado EV represents Ultium in my mind, and it's a better road tripper than Hummer anyway. So we had the 4 major platforms, if you will. And we all thought genuinely that the Cybertruck, under normal circumstances, would come last place. It has the smallest battery and the worst charging curve of the bunch. And ultimately, if anyone watched the video, which is live by now, you'll know that we came second place behind the Silverado. And like, how is that even possible, that we all assumed this would be bad? And what it really came down to, from our, or at least from my standpoint, was just the frequency of Tesla supercharging locations. If we had to do 100-mile, 150-mile, 180-mile gaps between chargers, we would have been hours behind where we are. And the reason is because the Cybertruck only charges fast from 0 to 29%. That's when it can hold 250 kilowatts. And then by the time you reach 50% state of charge, which was a deep charge for us on this trip, we were well below 150 kilowatts at that point. So, we really got lucky because that route had so much high power Tesla charging infrastructure. If it didn't, we would have for sure have been behind the Rivian, no question, and maybe even where the Lightning was in the back.
And what size is the battery in the Cybertruck that you're driving?
Yeah, it's 123 kilowatt hours usable. In comparison to the Lightning is 130 kilowatt hours. The Rivian is 135, and the Silverado that we used was 180.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. Okay, interesting. So I'd like to, before, you talked a little bit about your strategy. It sounds like 50% was kind of along one of the deepest charges that you did, because Kyle, you've raced before. Drew, you've raced before. Brandon, have you raced along as well? Were you ready for their strategy?
I mean, I was there for like the race to Vegas 2 years ago, so I kind of understood what I was getting into. I just didn't think it would be as intense, because it was definitely not as intense the first time, and this time it was like we had to do every possible thing to optimize, and like even to the point of like staying behind cars, and the other Rivian. Just it was kind of expected, but also a little extreme. Not a
A
regular
little.
person would not be doing that.
No,
Yeah.
and, I mean, and you got second, so it seems like probably that efficiency, along with the, ubiquity of the Supercharger network, definitely helped, apparently, to what you were thinking. But, I guess you thought, "Hey, if we're gonna come in last, we really have to be strategic and rush out." So did you leave at 100%? And then how far did you go? What was your typical way of traveling? Like, how'd you run down the battery? How much did you
Mhm.
charge it up? You said that maybe you were drafting behind, other cars. Tell me more about your strategy.
Well, Drew, your strategy man, you
Sure.
can explain.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. I mean, so Kyle did get the Cybertruck up to as close to 100% as possible. The service center, is that the one you picked it up from?
Yes, it's the one
It's yeah.
that we picked it up from. We charged it there, and then they were like, "You can't charge here," and we're like, "Oh, we're making our way back to the truck really slowly."
Yeah, and it's full charge. So anyway, bye. Yeah, yeah. So that worked out great because that wasn't too far from the starting point. So yeah, great. Pretty much as good of a starting state of charge as we could possibly have, and then yeah, we all got together and did our things. The intro that you've seen, and then we headed off. So the first charging stop for us, I forget how many miles it was, but I remember arriving with a pretty high state of charge. So it was, 100 to like 25 or 30 or something like that. And and was that was the rainstorm.
Yeah, that's where the
So
truck
yeah,
fell in the sinkhole.
oh my God. So yeah, so it starts off pretty dramatic with rolling into this, just, you're coming up to this just dark black, wall of water. And I mean, it was probably some of the hardest rain I've ever seen. And so we were, set to go to a charger a little bit further and really, maximize that full, battery pack. But then we weren't going to make it, so our efficiency just went way down, and we had to make a quick, splash and dash. And this charger that we went into had this, just massive sinkhole, which turned into puddle that you couldn't really see. I didn't see at all. The truck practically, we almost had to use, wade mode. And
Whoa.
so yeah, that was an interesting first stop, but perfect to that point. There's no more time on the table. That first stop was absolutely maximized, and in and out, back on the
Well, Drew, do
highway.
you remember that was the first time we
Mhm.
had an issue with the
Sure.
Tesla Supercharger. It wouldn't charge. And
Sure.
then we
Yes.
moved it again and it wouldn't charge. And then we unplugged and waited. And then we started to figure out that we had an issue with our charging. If you plug in the Cybertruck too soon, it does not accept a charge.
What do you
Right.
mean too
Yeah.
soon? Too soon from when?
From parking and hopping out and literally plugging in,
Oh.
as quickly as you physically can is too quick. So it's more like
Okay.
a take your seatbelt off, open the door, sort of casually walk over to the charger and then plug in, give it that, sort of few seconds, and then you would get normal, ramp up to full
Mm.
charging speed.
Mm.
So yeah, I don't know if you have any new info on why that happens, but anyway, maybe something with the 800-volt system there. So yeah, learning curve there. That would have been good to learn ahead of time. But anyway, now we're like, okay, this is what the deal is. So we probably didn't need to move chargers that first one. Yeah, so a little bit of a learning curve as we got going.
Mm-hmm.
But after
Definitely.
that
Yeah.
first stop, it was so cool because, the Lightning also had the same approach where they thought they were going to stretch their full battery. Everyone did. And really
Yep.
only the Silverado with that huge ass battery, technical term, could stretch it that far to go to Chipley, I think is where they were going. And we saw the Lightning there at the first charging stop. And, when that happened, I was like, the Lightning, the theory for us was the Lightning's going to charge to 80% every time. It can hold 120 kilowatts all the way to 80%. And like at 80%, we're doing like 60. We're doing half of that. So that's where the whole theory came that the Cybertruck is going to do pretty poorly in comparison to the other vehicles. And with that first charging stop, we were in and out in 3 minutes, 5 minutes, something like
Yep.
that. It was so close that as we were pulling back onto the highway, we saw the Silverado EV right there because they had got stuck in traffic leaving Jacksonville. And we were like one traffic light ahead. So we basically charged for a full light cycle. And then we were
Right.
back.
Right.
Oh my God. Such a quick charge. That's pretty crazy. Okay. Fun off the bat, learning things that you didn't know about the Cybertruck so that you can have more and more efficient stops and charges. And you're only using the Tesla Superchargers, right? I know that we tried the CCS adapter, Kyle, when we first got our hands on a Cybertruck in Austin, but we realized it wouldn't even fit into the charge port. It was too small for the CCS adapter due to its design. So did you consider that was just no go at all? Then you couldn't use CCS infrastructure.
So we could, since this trip, we learned a lot about what was causing some of the problems. The Cybertruck will charge on CCS on certain stations that it worked with. And actually, it just got a software update only a week ago at this point, which is after our road trip, where now it seems to work on every CCS station. It now follows the official protocol. And I've developed this little adapter string, which is basically a spacer. So now I don't have to take the whole side of the truck off. So this is like a NAX to NAX spacer into the Tesla adapter. I do not recommend anyone do this. This is a 500 volt rated adapter. This is one of those breakaway things that if you trip over the cable, it can arc. It's super sketchy. But at least I did charge the Cybertruck yesterday at CCS at 330 kilowatts peak last night.
Nice.
And so, now the fastest way to road trip this thing is to skip the superchargers and hit CCS. But that was not a thing at the time.
Wow. Okay, so could have been, but okay, Brandon, do you wish that you could have used the CCS chargers, or were the superchargers where you needed them to be? I mean, obviously you would have gotten faster charges apparently.
Yeah, I think there was also that risk of it not working and then us wasting our time. So it was just easier to rely only on superchargers.
That's true. And were they typically right off the highway? I know that a lot of the CCS teams had to go to Walmarts that are like 4 miles off the highway and go through those parking lots and stuff. But Tesla seems to be, they went right for the corridors right away. Did y'all typically hit that kind of convenient infrastructure?
Yeah.
That was a big part of why this strategy worked, is because almost all of them were less than a mile off the road. And so easy decisions to just, you're really commit to that, 0 to 30, 0 to 30, and just pop in and out of the very convenient superchargers, mostly V3s. But I don't know, it's like, I feel like it was a good moment in time, because even since then Rivian has gained access to the supercharger network, and so things have changed even in the few weeks since the drive. So for us to do supercharger only, I think is a cool data point, and it'd be of course fun to try it again and see if we can take advantage of higher charging with CCS.
Yeah, I think actually it probably would still be slower now that I'm thinking about it to use CCS for most locations, because handshake time, proximity to the highway, and the benefit of that over 300 kilowatts is only from about 0 to 8%. At about 8 or 9%, you come below 300 kilowatts. And at that point, we could just sit at 250 on a version 3 supercharger and rock and roll. I mean, I think ultimately what we learned through this trip is we found the Cybertruck stresses the existing supercharger network harder than any other Tesla ever has. And we found derated superchargers. We found that cable cooling is not sufficient for this truck. And Brandon can walk us through what we had to do to circumvent, not that we're recommending any of this, but to circumvent some of the temperature sensors. And we also found just like weird issues that we had never seen with superchargers until we drove this vehicle. And I really hope Tesla supports 1,000 volt natively. They need to. Their truck needs high voltage charging. It will keep cable temperatures so much cooler. It would let the truck charge at its maximum rate with significantly less current. And what's crazy to me is Tesla has a vehicle that can charge way faster than any single piece of supercharger equipment installed anywhere in the world right now.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it'd be interesting to be able to compare the supercharger network with the CCS with 2 Cybertrucks on the road. That would be pretty crazy. But I do hope that if you do another race, I'm included. And also that we have, maybe I'll get like a truck of chicks, which would be fun to throw them in there. I think that would be really fun to me. It sounds like y'all had a good time. But also with Tesla, there is FSD, full self-driving. I know since then, the version 12 is out and everyone's having a ton of fun with that. And we'll have podcasts about that. But did you have any of those driver's assistance, or what lacked, or what were you using, or were you purposely not using it so you could drive how you wanted to? What did y'all do there?
Well, Cybertruck still has no autopilot, no FSD. So yeah, we use the adaptive cruise, which is the only driver assistance that it has at the moment. So, I would actually prefer just a bare bones cruise control, because, when we're going in and out of traffic and we're starting to get, closer to a vehicle, it, starts to slow down. And so you got to be like right on the throttle, and it's almost harder than just driving yourself in a lot of situations. But then, yeah, obviously good when you're open roads, just to hold that exact maximum speed that we can do. But yeah, not like the Lightning crew, for instance.
Yeah, they had that blue, what do they call it? It's
Blue
not the
Cruise.
Blue Cruise.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
you got it.
they
Yeah,
definitely like that. And
yeah.
they were cruising, I gotta say. So I think people will see
Yes.
that too. Y'all had a very different strategy than maybe they did, which I wasn't there. I'm not sure which strategy I would employ. I think it would definitely be dependent on the team and their energy and everything. But when you were on the road, I know that you pull off to that first one and then you see the Silverado go by. Were you typically seeing other trucks on the road? Were you passing them? Were there different parts along the 50 hours where you saw them? What was that like?
Oh yeah, yeah. We saw everybody. Yeah, that was the last time we saw the Lightning, and they just slipped further and further behind from that point. But yeah, we were mixing it up with the other two trucks the whole time,
Mm.
basically. So I forget when the last charge was that we saw the Rivian, where they were. We got a glimpse of the aggression level in that vehicle. Um, but
Well, I mean,
they
we were in like right on the California border, right? Just like
yeah, yeah.
somewhere there. And we are,
Mhm.
we are ripping in and out of stations because we know like, okay, we have to work so hard here. And they must have been feeling the same thing because I was pulling out of the parking lot like full brakes to stop. And then I just see a Rivian in full ABS coming right by us
Oh
and
my
passing a
God.
truck like on the right. Like it was hilarious. Just I think
Yeah,
Colby employs the NASCAR lifestyle, and he was full send.
for sure, for sure.
Yeah, some other
Yeah.
competitive people out there. That's good. Okay, so Brandon, Kyle mentioned a little bit of something about temperature because, of course, charging all that energy, it can get a little heated, right? And you're trying to be efficient, so there's ways where you can try to help the cooling, but typically, your typical person wouldn't do that, right? They might not even know what's happening, that the cables are getting hot or whatever's going on. So, what curious things were you getting up to?
Yeah, so this is actually something that Kyle's been doing for a while, and I learned from him. So the cable or the handle of the cable was getting too hot, and I guess there's a sensor in there, so it was basically derating the charger, right? And it was making it so the Cybertruck would just kind of charge curve just falls off a cliff way faster. So we started putting like a wet rag on it or a wet microfiber towel, and suddenly it just the issues went away. And then later on, we had to start wrapping the top of the cable with a different towel because it was getting too hot there. But it definitely helped to kind of like keep the cable cooler and keep the charge rate higher, but not something that I'd recommend for people to do on like a regular basis. I don't know if it's even bad for the Chargers or something.
We did get some comments, which is like, well, you're fooling temperature sensors. And to keep in mind, I've seen a lot of the spec data on Tesla supercharger handles and everything. The first thing that actually gets too hot beyond spec is the exterior temperature sensor for like hand burning. Nothing actually internal. The plastic can handle more, but Tesla derates early so that you don't. For OG Tesla owners, version 2 superchargers used to get so hot you would almost sear your hand on them, and people were complaining about that. So Tesla put in a temperature sensor. It may have already been there, and just said derate the current based on the exterior physical temperature. There are other temperature sensors for the pins on both the inlet of the vehicle and the outlet of the supercharger handle. So essentially what we're doing is we're cooling the exterior surface and fooling that one temperature sensor. It's not really fooling. We are cooling down the exterior temperature so that it doesn't burn your hand. And therefore, now we're relying just on the physical connection sensors to derate if things actually get hot in the connection, which they don't typically, as long as you have a good mated connection. So I
Hmm.
wouldn't say it's dangerous, but this is the trick. And we would be I don't want to say I bet we saved over the entire trip anywhere between 40 minutes and an hour thanks to the
Mhm.
cooling of the cables. If we didn't have that, we for sure would have been behind the Rivian.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's a good question. People are like, what's going on when you're in cooling these? What's the sensor? But I mean, your theory seems to make sense, or perhaps it's proven that it is, for the safety standards, like the McDonald's coffee spilling in your lap. You got to protect the customers, right? Okay, interesting. Were there any other hacks that y'all did along the way? And I mean, did you help the other teams at all, or did you keep all of your strategy to yourself?
Yeah, no, we gave away, we showed our cards. I mean, we had, so Glimpse was running on all vehicles, so we could all see each other. That's what you now have seen in the videos. And so, there's that. Okay, we know where everybody is. And then we're having phone calls and talking over strategies and stuff like that. So although the Silverado did get quite quiet, especially towards the last like third, they I think opted out of that getting towards the end, because it was close.
Yeah,
But
getting
yeah, other
serious.
than that, the cable cooling was huge. And then just the little things like the weight to plug in and just being on top of it. I think that's probably more important than anything else, is just always be, which is one thing that gets, pretty exhausting on these trips, is, you can't really just, turn your brain off. You got to kind of always be like, okay, like I saw the charge rate go down sooner than it should have. Do we have a charger issue? Is something getting too hot? What should we do? And always making those decisions on the fly.
Yeah, and I bet you're getting tired. That's a long time to spend doing anything, and not in the, it's not at home. You can't go take a lonesome rest in your own bedroom. So spending this much time in the Cybertruck, what are your impressions of comfort, drivability? I mean, yeah, just living inside of it for so long. Not many people, I think, will do that, but a lot of people will probably road trip it. And also, it reminded me, Drew, of like Amazing Race. Like, would you be able to do it in an electric vehicle? Probably not, but you have to like be there and be comfortable. So what was it like being in the Cybertruck for that long?
Brandon, why don't you start us off?
Well, I was riding the back for a good part of it. So on it, like the first part, I was just in the back. So it was pretty comfortable, and it wasn't as loud as the front, but it definitely was kind of loud. And I think just because the motors are just louder in general, and maybe in the future they'll have more insulation, but especially like in the front, when you're going like 85 miles an hour, it was loud, and it was like a continuous loud, and there was some kind of like motor whine, and it wasn't like super obnoxious, but you could definitely hear it was there. And after a while, it was kind of like, why is this making a noise? Like Model 3 or Y wouldn't do that, but obviously different motors and different, completely different car. But
Mm.
just the seats in the back were really nice. It was like, didn't really feel like I had like a limited leg room or anything. Like everyone was comfortable in there, and you could lay down fully on the back seats, and someone could also lay their seat back all the way. So there was plenty of space for us. And it was just nice to also, no matter where we were, people were taking pictures and videos and almost crashing into us, or almost driving off the road, or, semi truck drivers pulling up right next to us and then going super slow so they can take videos. It was nonstop, but inside
Yeah.
it was great.
That was like a unique challenge that we had that no one else had, which is okay, Drew and I are pretty used to dealing with traffic, and we can kind of predict what a car is going to do as we go through traffic. It's just, the social etiquette of driving, if you will. Everyone kind of, has their own thing, and you can see that from a mile away, how they're driving, what they're going to do, and it's very predictable. When you drive a Cybertruck, you have no idea how anyone around you is going to drive. And we had people that were trying to take a photo and coming into our lane, and we had to go in the shoulder, and we had people slowing down in front of us, especially in the Southeast. Whatever was going on in like the panhandle of Florida into Louisiana and Mississippi and this whole
They were
area,
losing their minds.
it was like bro truck territory, and they all loved the Cybertruck.
Wow. Yeah, that's something that is a little worrisome, is people like out trying to run you off the road, or not trying to, but the consequences of their actions, right? And then of course at Chargers, that's like you're sitting ducks for people chatting with you, and y'all are trying to get out of there in a light cycle, so how did that work? Did you just act like you didn't know no hablo inglés?
Yeah, there might have been a little bit of that. I might be the MVP when it comes to that one.
Yes, that's
Um,
true.
but yeah, I mean, there were certain situations where, I mean, it never got to be a problem. Like we were never held at a charger longer than we wanted to be. Like when it was time to unplug and get in the vehicle, we just unplugged and got in the vehicle and
Yeah,
drove
that
away.
was end of conversation. See you later.
Just
Sorry, but we're out.
Yep. But
Gotta
then
go.
there were some situations where when we did get into V2 land, where we had to just get a little creative with, it actually maybe had an advantage then having the Cybertruck, where, okay, let's get a crowd around here so that we block the charging spot next to us so that somebody doesn't pull in and cut our charging rate in half.
Oh, I forgot all about that. So
Mm.
when we went through that stretch on the highway where there was like 2 or 3 version 2 superchargers without V3
Yep.
infrastructure, our biggest fear was having someone else pull up next to us and split
Right.
power. And
Right.
so we would like pull up and open all the doors. And I hate to admit this because we never held anyone up from charging, but we would just encourage them to use another spot. So we would take the handle and wrap it over top of the charger to make it look like it was a dead supercharger. Again, we're not stopping people from charging there because there were other
Nobody
open.
was ever waiting. Right. Nobody
Yeah.
was ever waiting. Yep.
And I think one time we did have to let someone like park next to us and we like
Yep.
were good. And they turned out to be a viewer, which was like kind of funny because they didn't say that until like 10 minutes into the conversation. And then I was like, oh, so this is what we're doing. Another spot just opened up. Could you move your Model X over so we could get full power? And they were like, hell yeah, we're all in. And then we got back up to full power. So yeah, then we wrapped the supercharger cable back up over top of that unit.
So you had
I
boundaries.
think we left
You're
one
like,
of
we're
them.
good. Oh, you think you left one of them up? Yeah, I won't tell. I won't
Yeah,
tell anyone.
yeah, but I'm sure someone else figured it out. They probably saw that it was
Yeah.
working and just like, who did that?
Yeah, just
The
follow
fact-
their route.
Yeah, the fact that you're guilty about it is what matters.
Yeah.
Mhm. Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
you
it's
wouldn't
the
just
thought that
leave cables
counts.
hanging over and just be like, cool.
Yeah.
No,
No,
we
we
genuinely
went,
forgot on
yeah.
one, but on the other ones, we returned everything back to normal afterwards.
Mhm. Can't fault you too much. You were racing across the country after all. So okay, you spent a lot of time together, right? And you spent a lot of time strategizing. And then tell me, you're getting towards the end, and what is happening? It's been like 2 days. It's been 2 days on the road, like 48 hours by the time you're nearing the end in California, or am I
I think,
exaggerating?
yeah, you're 10
About
hours.
40,
Yeah.
40.
right?
It's 40
Okay.
hours and 15
little over
minutes.
40.
Chris.
Yeah, there you go.
Wow. Okay. 40 hours. So you're nearing in on 40 hours. You are looking at Glimpse. I'm sure you're like, oh my gosh, the lightning we might have to really be competing here at the end. Just kidding. As we know, the lightning was quite at the back. But okay. So you're really competing with the Silverado for all that you know. So what's happening at the end?
Mhm.
How are you trying to get first? How close is it? What's going on?
Yeah, it's tight. Really, we started to get a little bit discouraged when we were going through the V2 area. That was like, yeah, coming out of Arizona, I guess, somewhere around there. And, there's just a couple V2s in a row, and it wasn't looking good. Even if we got back to our normal V3s, every 80 miles right off the highway, they still would have, had a gap and probably something that we wouldn't be able to catch back up to. But I haven't seen the third part of the race. I'm looking forward to it because I don't know what exactly happened in the Silverado, but they did seem to lose a bit of time, and then we got back into our normal, V3s, nicely spaced, and we were back in it. So yeah, coming into the last leg, we were close, and just kept up the pace and optimization to the very end. So yeah, that's gonna be exciting to watch. I can't wait.
Yeah, me neither. So it sounds like you hit V3 territory again, so got a little bit of a luck there. And then what was the timing like at the end? Do y'all remember?
Well, so the very last, well, not the very last, but what was planned to be our very last charging stop, so the second to last, we that's probably the one regret that I have is we really should have just stayed a little bit longer, got just a little bit more energy into the battery because it got basically, so yeah, and a little bit of more research ahead of time probably would have been good because the mountains that we had to cross in between that charging stop and the finish, there was actually 4 summits. So we were going up and down, up and down, up and down. And I'm doing everything I can. I drove the last leg, and just trying to optimize, like really everything. We're like, okay, now it's HVAC off, everything off, lights off, even, and just, no adaptive cruise, nothing like that. It's just, purely manual, and just trying to, be as smooth as possible, use as little energy as possible, let the thing just coast, and, when possible. Um, so yeah, it was probably the most tense on public roads I've ever felt, actually. And
Oh, the
so,
drama.
yeah, yeah, everything I could do to get the range out of it, but also keep the
Yeah,
speed
we were
up.
like wiping the inside of the windshield because we were fogging
It
up.
was fogging up.
And
Yep.
yeah,
Oh
but
my
but
God.
what's interesting is the Cybertruck's range estimator was always pretty good throughout the trip, but I think that kind of screwed us, and also lack of research ahead of time kind of screwed us because we could have made it to the end. No question,
Oh, yeah.
we could get the truck to the ending point. The question was, can we get to the truck to the ending point and still maintain enough speed to get in front of the Silverado? Because our whole strategy at the end was we were following the Silverado by about 10 miles, 6 to 10 miles up that
Yep.
hill, and we started to see them slow down, which to
Yep.
us was an indication that, oh, they don't have enough energy to make it to
Right.
the end, and they're
Yep.
trying to stretch it. And we were like showing a -2% arrival, and we all know Cybertruck has a buffer, so we're like, we could probably get to -4% and still make it dead, which we were totally prepared to just have the thing die at the end and just walk away, go to sleep, and deal with it in the morning. But they then there was a switch that flipped in them, I guess, somewhere halfway through that mountain range where they were just like, nope, we're going full speed. They must have seen us on glimpse coming up,
Yep.
and they just dialed it right up. And then we knew that if they were doing that, they were going to have to stop and charge one more time.
Right.
And
Right.
then we were like, well, we just need to get in front of them by the time they merge back on the highway. And we need enough energy to at least make it to Dog Beach, the finish line. And it was crazy that it was coming down to this. And ultimately, the weather got really cold and really hilly,
Yeah.
and no matter what, even if we had we dropped speed a little bit towards the end because we're like, we still
Yep.
need like a -3, -4% arrival. Um, and ultimately they got on the highway just before us.
Mm. This
Yep.
is interesting because I have talked to the Silverado team, and so I know what they were thinking then, and what y'all were seeing, and this is fun. I have a little insider view that I
Nice.
guess y'all will get when you watch it. But they were being strategic from my
Oh, yeah.
memory, so a little trickery. I think they might have been engaging in there, knowing that they were being watched. But I'll let you look into that yourselves a little bit. I think our audience might have seen this already. Yeah, go
But
Kyle.
what
Yeah.
was interesting was they did a last charging stop. I don't think they were
Yeah.
planning on doing that final charging stop. And by the
Nope.
time they got in front of us, we then just decided, well, the Rivian was still at that point, I think 15 or 20 minutes behind us, something like
Yeah.
that. They were on the same mountain we were on, but on the other end of it. And then
Mhm.
we had decided, well, we don't really want to deal with a dead truck at the end of this. We're going to secure second place no matter what, which is why we did one last charging stop. So we ramped the speed back up, made it to the last supercharger we could make it to, plugged in for like 3 minutes, and then we went in for the finish with enough energy to get back to that supercharger so we didn't have a dead Cybertruck.
Mm.
Wreck the truck. Yeah.
Yeah, don't wanna do that. Okay, so Drew, you mentioned a few things that you might do differently, like, more research, perhaps look into the topography of your route even. Was there anything else that y'all would have done differently in this case? Brandon, anything that comes to mind?
I would have just focused on being more like, I guess, efficient earlier on, just because I guess those little like 2-minute wait times over like 29 charging stops, that's an hour. So those like the minute at each thing, the extra minute waiting at a light or behind a car, all those little things just added on. But we were able to
Or
trim out a lot of those things.
Waiting for your order at the
Yeah, I was ready to just walk out of there.
Oh, waiting for food?
Yeah, they made it, and then they made it like for here. Even though when he took the order, he's like, "Are you eating in or taking out?" I'm like, "I'm taking it out." And then he's like, "Here's your food," and he gives it to me on a tray. I'm like, "Oh."
Okay, taking this to the
And then
Cybertruck.
he took his sweet time to put it in a bag. Yeah, I didn't want to say, "I'm gonna race. I need you to bag this up as soon as possible."
No, gotta stay polite, of course, man. Okay, yeah, that would have been frustrating. Like, Kyle's out there with steam coming out of his ears, I'm sure.
Yeah, we were calling him. We're like, we're leaving. We're going to leave you there. I don't know what you're doing.
I have to eat. Okay, so I think you mentioned like 29 charging stops or something. How many charging stops did y'all do overall?
29.
30, right?
Yeah, 30.
29?
Yeah, 30. I guess. Yeah,
With the last one.
But there were more plugins because we were either overheating cables or found derated chargers. So in total, we probably had 40 plugins, but at 30 locations.
Okay. So something you might have done differently is, make sure that you really emphasize to go. This is a to go order. Maybe be more efficient in the beginning to really get that step ahead right when you start so that you have slack in between. Anything else?
From my viewpoint, we really ultimately, you're always going to find time on the table, especially driving across the entire country. But I find it hard to believe any team was more efficient than us across the country. I mean, I don't think anyone could do with the amount of charging stops that we did and the amount of just in and off the highways. We got so lucky with lights. I mean, only a handful of chargers were more than 1 hour, more than 1 mile off the highway.
Yep.
And we just really got so lucky. And I really think overall Drew and I had done this a few times now. We know the drill, and that was we were full send the whole way. And I'm not sure the Lightning crew fully got that message, which is like every millisecond matters, but they did pretty well. But I think they definitely, at least after the first couple stops. I mean, we also tried to like run around at the first stop and like really make a point that time matters when we saw them at that first charging stop, just to encourage some haste. I'm not sure that message got through to them though.
Some people just run on a different on island time, right? And so that's something to consider for the next race. Yeah. So what about efficiency? Did you have like a kilowatt hour per mile stat that you can share that you remember you were getting in the Cybertruck over this whole 40 hours?
We do. I don't remember what it is.
We don't remember. Maybe I will get that number and overlay it here.
Yeah, we were like just under 2 miles per kilowatt hour, maybe 1.8. We end the video with everyone's efficiencies.
Okay, great.
So I go through and log the data off every truck. But the Cybertruck was I think the second in efficiency. The Rivian was the most efficient. Cybertruck, then Lightning, then Silverado, I think is how the efficiency worked.
We'll double check that in the final video. Okay, cool. So not that bad, not too surprising or anything. Okay, so would you do it again? Probably. I think that y'all would, but would you do it again in the Cybertruck, or would you want to give a different truck a go?
I like to win, so I would maybe give the Silverado a go. That'd be fun. And then, I guess if this was ultimately supposed to be like a representative cross-country trip of these 4 electric vehicles and how they compare, then so we probably sort of failed in the Cybertruck because we probably did too well, above average for the what the normal person would be willing to do. So it'd be nice to just do an even faster time, but in a more casual way, which you can do in the Silverado. It's just a little bit closer to a combustion vehicle, really. So yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah, how much slower do
And
you think a
man,
normal road trip would be in the Cybertruck? You think it would be 4 hours slower if you just do it with Trip Planner?
probably.
Yeah.
With trip planner, like complete, like just
Like you're just
not
a normal
using.
dude who
Oh
just bought
man,
one.
7
Yeah.
hours.
yeah, 4+.
Really?
I don't. It would be a lot of time. It'd be a lot of time.
Which was crazy because we were talking to Wes, the lead engineer of the Cybertruck, who was like following the race. It was pretty cool. And I have to throw him under the bus a little bit here. I like Wes, but like he was like, "Oh, just follow Trip Planner." And like I'm like, "Dude, do you know how bad that is? Like we would be last place."
In
It was
what way is it
ridiculous.
bad?
I mean, so when you arrive at a charger and you're doing your charging session and you're looking for your next, well, I mean, I guess if you're doing Trip Planner, then you're not looking for your next one. You're just waiting for it to tell you when to leave. But let's even say that we have turned Trip Planner off. Oh, which, by the way, speaking of throwing people under the bus, I taught Kyle that you can turn Trip Planner off on this trip.
Oh.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
anyway,
it's true. I've always used the use Trip Planner, ignore it, and then scroll down and hit remove charging stations. But Drew's like, you
sure.
can just leave this shitty software off forever. And I'm like,
Completely
that's
off.
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but anyway, so it was telling you, what your next arrival state of charge would be, and that was always so far off. So that's sort of another big part of the learning curve is just basically ignoring that and doing our own calculations. And so, yeah, I mean, that's probably my biggest gripe with that system. Really, really good and probably, sort of class leading, but room for improvement, like big time.
Yeah, sounds like it. Maybe they need like out of spec mode where it's,
Yes.
obviously catered to this more type of driving. But yeah, Brandon, do you have any other big, like, what's your biggest takeaway from this experience? You'll never do a road trip
The
again with
Cybertruck.
Kyle?
No,
Yeah.
I would do another one. I would honestly race against Kyle in the next one because I've learned a lot and I want to see if I can actually apply that.
Nice.
But I mean, I guess before I was kind of under that impression that the Cybertruck, like it was a cool car, but it really wasn't that great at road trips. So like it wasn't as good as it was like when they announced it in 2019. But then just kind of experiencing it and actually like driving it and riding in it, you kind of see like a lot of that is just kind of like clouded. Once you actually experience it, you realize it's a good car. There's just a lot of things that they have to improve, just like any first generation product. And all it did is make me want a Cybertruck even more.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah,
That's fun.
Francie, you asked earlier, like, would you do it in another vehicle? And personally, I would take the Cybertruck again. I think it's exciting. It's really a challenge to optimize. The Lightning is easy because anyone can pretty much drive the Lightning and not think about it and get the same result. Because in that vehicle, you just always charge it to 80% based off of its charging curve. This, you are constantly calculating, looking at things, and going. Now, I really hope that Tesla fattens up the charge curve. The charge curve on this is rough. Really needs to fatten up the charge curve. And that right there, just that one change would turn this into a road tripper that you have to work really hard to optimize into something you can just cruise and not really think about it in. And it can almost double the distance between the charging stations. You'll start skipping them. Our perfect distance between chargers to fully maximize this truck was 60 miles. 60 to 65 miles, because we were getting at 85 miles an hour, which was the maximum we could drive, just about 200 miles or just under on a charge. So we would charge to 30% and then we'd arrive after 60 miles at 0. And then we would charge really fast back to 30%. And that was the perfect distance for us to just only charge at peak rates and to rock from charger to charger. And if they could hold peak charging speeds to 60%, I mean, the Porsche Taycan, as an example, has a smaller battery than this by a lot, and it holds over 300 kilowatts to 60% state of charge, 65% state of charge. Just shows how far behind Tesla is in charging speeds than the competition. And certainly, I would say that the Taycan is competition to the Cybertruck. They're both unnecessary luxury goods, and someone will have to choose between one or the other. A lot of people. And that charging performance of the Taycan, if they just put that battery in here, even with the smaller capacity, we would have been way faster across the country.
Yeah, that would have been crazy. Okay, that's a good point. You know, there's a fun challenge for Tesla to take on there. Of course, it's what I would think. And y'all did this is a crazy road trip. This is not something that I would say 99% of the population is going to duplicate. So, what lessons can you take from this crazy road trip to give to a normal person who's going to road trip an electric vehicle?
We probably make it
Brandon.
seem more intense than it actually is.
Mhm.
Which, if you just are a normal person on a road trip, which I also become a normal person on a road trip when I'm just driving somewhere, and I just charge and I get food and whatever the car charges to, whatever, and I go. And these races are not meant to be representative of a customer experience. They're meant to push vehicles to their absolute maximum limits so that we can compare against each other. It's like sports cars and Nürburgring times. Maybe, unless you're Drew, but a normal person like myself could never get into a GT3 RS and match the factory lap time that Porsche set. However, it is nice to know what your car can do because someone did that test, and that's what we were doing here. We're doing a test to run the vehicles to the maximum road trip ability, just so people can enjoy it, watch it. Yes, it's content for us, but it's also interesting. It gets the automakers involved. Like I said, we had the Tesla engineering team watching us. The Ford team was heavily involved. The GM team was heavily involved. Rivian, everyone was watching it. So it's kind of like this automaker battle done by us. And so that's why it's so important to me that everyone maximizes their truck to literally the best they can do, because that we're here basically doing a competitive event that people will in some cases base a buying decision off of. So it's important that we are fully optimized.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what gets me going about these, is that competition aspect. And obviously, yeah, we can make the determination on, this team probably lost X amount of minutes, or potentially hour or something like that. But I think we're all doing pretty darn close to totally optimizing each vehicle. That this is good data for for people that are willing to do that if they're making a purchasing decision and really optimize like that. Or I mean, at the very least, we're educating the automakers by doing this. So it's just awesome.
Very cool. I can't wait to be a part of one. Seems fun. I do think
Absolutely.
it's a first in a lot of ways, getting all these electric trucks, which are firsts in themselves, and racing them across the country. Pretty exciting. Is there anything else y'all want to like tell the audience here that maybe wouldn't have made it into the video, or that you want to reiterate or emphasize about this truck race? No.
I don't think so for me.
I think maybe on my side, just how stable the Cybertruck was in terms of software performance. When we had been testing them, Drew was with us in Austin. We had warnings and issues, and Brandon had his screen shut off in the Cybertruck, and like just random bugs. We didn't have a single glitch in 40 hours of consistent driving. So the truck was solid. It went to 0% every single time without question, which we can't say for the Lightning. And that was a learning experience for Ford. We spoke to the Ford engineers about that experience, and they learned a lot. They pulled all the data off the truck. They're adjusting their algorithms, and that will improve every existing F-150 Lightning on the road just by using our data. And so that was cool. I was pleased to see that, but I have to say Tesla at least nailed the stability of this truck. It took them a few months, but they got it dialed in now.
Super cool. Really exciting, super fun. I loved hearing your insider scoop on what was going on. Excuse me, inside of the Cybertruck while you were racing across the country, and looking forward to seeing the last episode. It's been fun to follow along. So thank you, Drew, Brandon,
wait.
and Kyle for coming onto the podcast to talk all things Cybertruck racing.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate your time. Yeah,
Great to
thank
be
you.
here.
Of course. And I'm sure that folks are asking questions over on the Out of Spec motoring videos, but of course, feel free to ask them here to the Cybertruck team. What do you think? Would you take the Cybertruck? Which truck would you take? Would you want this crew or a chiller crew? Let us know in the comments. Thanks again, y'all. And thank you, audience, for tuning in. We'll have links to everyone's stuff in the show notes if you're curious about Drew and Brandon and, of course, the race. So make sure to check those out. We'll see you next time on the next episode. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.